Just a quick question, please. How many parents do we have in the audience? May I please see a show of hands? Even though I can't see. Great, like let's say 20%. Lovely. Just like many of the parents, I do juggle many roles. I'm a mom, I'm a management consultant, I'm an educator, I'm a researcher, but by far my greatest achievement is being the mother of Farouk. See, the backbone of today's talk is about how he learned to succeed. So for those who aren't parents, cannot identify with him or with me, but that's okay. Please bear with me for a few minutes. It will all make sense to you eventually. Let me tell you first about my childhood. I was born in Beirut, and I was raised by exceptional role models. One, my mom graduated with a PhD from Sorbonne in Paris. My father has graduated from HEC in Switzerland. I even looked up to my grandfather, who was a scholar in Islam and Arabic culture. He was very recognized. And my uncle, who has been investing in education for the past 25 years, has established over 10 schools across the MENA region. So I myself graduated from one of those schools and then joined Michigan State University in the US to graduate with a master's degree and a PhD. See, with this background, I had very high expectations academically and professionally for my son. I wanted to raise him with the same standards and the same values, Arabic and Islamic values, that I had to live up to. On one side, I wanted him to grow up and has the perseverance to face all the challenges, to become a self-directed learner, to be open to all possibilities. But at the same time, I wanted him to graduate from a university, get ahead of the crowd, and become a successful CEO, a great CEO. As well as I wanted him to become a human being who understands and appreciates his cultural roots, his religion, and our Arabic cultural values. So back then, I felt like I was asking for a lot. I felt like I needed to make a choice. And I really was confused. Why? Because I was struggling with two burning questions. One is, how does it look like to be a great CEO in the modern world? Do we look at the West for best practice? Do we import them and then customize them to the Arab world? What does customization mean? There was no research that would unpack what customization means. The second question I struggled with is, what type of education should I offer Farouk so he can grow into this creative, entrepreneurial, and globally competent leader without losing on those cultural values that I had to live up to? So to answer those two questions, it was fundamental that I go ahead and study our Arabic culture and how it intersects with leadership and education. So I gathered a group of researchers, education scholars, and management consultants to meet up and conduct face-to-face interviews with over 2,500 CEOs across 17 Arab countries across the MENA. We focused on 3 regions, the GCC, the Levant, and North Africa. Over 100,000 data points were collected. However, I'm here today to share with you 3 key findings. And those 3 key findings have to do with 3 variables: the impact of culture, homogeneity, and education. For those who know already what culture is, it's a set of beliefs, ideas, and behaviors, practices that a group of people share. You may ask, why do we need to study culture? I'll just give you 2 simple reasons. One, it is extremely important as a future leader to understand who you are. Self-awareness is key, especially your national identity. Who am I as an Arab? Who am I as a Saudi? What common mental programming do I share with other Saudis? The second reason you need to study culture is for you to understand how different you are from other people that are coming from other nationalities. Because by understanding differences, you will be able to avoid misunderstandings, avoid misconceptions, and avoid conflicts. Let me give you an example. If you were to meet up with a lady from Switzerland at 8 o'clock in the morning, you better be there at 8 a.m. Otherwise, it will be disrespectful for her. But if you were to meet up with a lady from Spain, she might show up somewhere between 8:15 and 8:20. And you should not take that personal. Again, culture will give you some foresight on what to predict or what to anticipate and avoid that misunderstanding. Because by doing that, you'll be able to build more meaningful relationships and build those business relationships and advance your business specifically as a leader. Let's zoom into the cultural impact on leadership. Our study has shown that national culture affects leadership in 7 different dimensions. Today, I'm only going to share with you how it affects leadership in 1 dimension, specifically how leaders, how Arab CEOs respond to power. Let me ask you a question. Who from the audience expect that power is distributed unequally? Can you give me a show of hands? Excellent. That's the majority of the audience. Actually, this is very similar to the country called India, where you have a caste system, and it is a norm, and people not only expect that power is distributed unequally, but also that power is distributed unequally, and it's accepted by everyone else. So it's expected and it's accepted. Cultural psychologists say that India has a high power distance index, a PDI. Just to put it in perspective, if you look at Germany or the Netherlands, they both have low PDI. Our research, when we studied Arab CEOs, it turned out that the majority of GCC countries have a higher PDI index compared to the Levant country. So not only we are different from the West, but also it turned out that there are statistically significant differences across our Arab countries. What does it mean to have a high power distance index? I'll give you an example. Managers or CEOs in a country with a high PDI are a source of knowledge, are the source of wisdom, and they're expected to be respected because of their positional power. They have the answers. They make critical decisions on behalf of the team. And they expect their subordinates to show loyalty, and they expect their subordinates not to contradict them. This is great. With high power comes a lot of responsibility and accountability. If you're lucky, your CEO, for example, will not only be morally responsible for your success, but will also be morally responsible for your well-being. That is great. He will grow you, he will develop you, and he will also be your mentor. But if you're not lucky, you will end up with a CEO who most probably doesn't know what he's doing. He will abuse that power, he will be insecure, and probably put you under the bus when things go wrong. The point we're trying to make here is that by understanding how culture affects different nationalities, you may be able to anticipate other people's thinking and behavior, and you may be able to learn how to navigate the political landscape of organizations, and you will be able to better build relationships and build rapport with others, and your emotional intelligence will be improved. This way you can build trust with others and reduce misunderstandings, and this way you will be able to advance your business, specifically in the Arab world where trust is a key ingredient. Let's move on to the second finding. The second finding has to do with homogeneity. Many of you have heard the homogeneity or homogeneous societies. It's a society like Finland where the majority of people share the same ethnicity, same religion, they speak the same language, and they share the same background. In contrast, the USA, for example, is a heterogeneous society where people are expected to have different values, people are expected to speak different languages, and to come from different backgrounds and religious backgrounds. It turned out, based on our study, that the majority of Arab CEOs are very homogeneous. And they showed specifically a high inclination to work with people with the same nationality, to work with people sometimes with the same gender. they showed a high preference for working with content, case studies, contract that are written in Arabic, and they have related to the local and the regional context. They also shown a preference to appoint people in key positions that they have a personal connection to. This is great, and this is totally normal in terms of us being part of a collectivist society. And it's also very humane to think that you would like to be surrounded with things and people that you can identify with. It feels like home to be surrounded with things that you share a common background or a common history with. However, the danger comes that in a homogenized thinking has a tendency to avoid challenging the status quo, avoid appreciating differences, and avoid thinking outside the box, which has implications on our ability to innovate. And if we would like to promote innovation for a knowledge-based economy, that homogeneity effect needs to be carefully addressed in schools and in the workplace. So let's look at our data. Our data shows that the UAE has scored highest on the homogeneity index, as you can see from the gray line, and the UAE has scored highest on the modernization index, as you can see from the blue line. So on one side, the UAE has shown a high desire to preserve and to appreciate and not to dilute the local culture. And I give you a very simple example. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, when he has asked 1 million students to read so that he can ensure that we learn our Arabic language and we preserve the Arabic language. UAE has scored highest on the modernization index, which shows our desire to open up to globalization, to change, to innovation. And again, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid is an example. Just 2 days ago, he has asked 1 million students to learn coding so that they can learn the language of computers. See, sometimes our mindsets and the values of homogeneity and modernization, they are at odds with each other. And that creates some tension. And this is the same tension I have faced and when I had to make a choice between both worlds. Let's move on to the third most important aha I had with my research. It turned out that education is the highest predictor for effective leadership, which means, specifically, executives that have attended Western or mixed education background, high school, let's say, were more inclined to choose best practices in leadership, in contrast to those who have attended a pure Arabic traditional education system. For me, this is heartbreaking as an Arab educator. So I really wanted to know what's going on and what can we do to fix it. As a management consultant, there are 3 key yardsticks that we use to measure or to assess the current state of our education system. First one has to do with performance, how our students are doing in schools. The second has to do with motivation, how engaged our students, how much they love learning, because by the end of the day, the purpose of an education system is to promote lifelong learning. And the third one is, what are the tangible outputs my graduates are creating or are delivering on to promote that knowledge-based economy? In terms of the high school grades of 15 years old, the PISA International Assessment, which measures proficiency levels of students around the world in math, reading, and science. And now here I'm going to take, again, the case study of the UAE. We have scored much lower than the OECD average. And the OECD is mainly the group of countries that include the Americas and European countries. But this is half of the story. The other half of the story is we have scored much lower than 2012. So in spite of the fact that the government students' expenditure is one of the highest around the world, we have declined in terms of our results in those assessments. The second yardstick has to do with motivation. If you look at the USA, when they measured the interest level of students, and they asked them, what is your attitude towards school? Are you excited to going to school tomorrow? Unlike what you see in movies, the USA interest level was positive. But if you look at the top of the graph, you look at China, the interest level is quite negative. Students hate going to school, and this is usually normal when you see how the government and how families pressure the students due to standardized testing. However, when you look at the UAE, we find that our kids, our youth, are neither disinterested, neither negative, nor positive. It's close to zero, which means the sample of youth, of generation we're facing, are indifferent. And this is quite alarming when you have a generation that doesn't care much about going to school. The third yardstick has to do with innovation. Let's look at the UAE, and you can see that it has one of the highest GDP per capita in terms of creating the ecosystem for innovation, but it scores low on innovation performance. And this is reflected in the Innovation Efficiency Index, which ranks the UAE 133rd in the world out of 145. What does that mean? It means that even though the government is creating one of the most amazing and advanced innovation ecosystem in the world, the output of innovation that is coming out of a citizen or an individual is quite low. And in fact, if you look around, you will see smart cities being built. You will see blockchain cities being launched. Just 2 days ago, you had an amazing appointment of a minister for artificial intelligence. The UAE itself is an amazing example for change, innovation, and transformation. I wish all Arab countries can imitate that. However, our challenge today is to convert that investment and those efforts into real outputs and to real results. And definitely, and I'm sure you agree with me, education is the vehicle that will help convert that investment into real outputs. Indeed, there are lots of education initiatives, reform initiatives underway. And my research shows that those education reform initiatives need to integrate, need to adopt a model called the 80-20 model. 80% of specific dimensions that we extract from the West to promote innovation and performance, and 20% that mirror specific nuances that will engage the Arabic learner and ensure that we promote our Arabic cultural values. That 80-20 model is what we currently use with our clients. And this is what I have chosen for my son. Today, my son is 19, going to 20, and graduated 2 years ago from a school, an IB school in Dubai. He was selected as a president twice, 2 years in a row, to represent over 75 nationalities. And he lives today in New York City. He's a student going to attending Stern School of Business. He has a dual major in finance and history. He has set up a startup with his partners, a fintech, using blockchain technologies, and he received a fellowship from NYU to study and work this summer in Silicon Valley. He has attended thus far 2 internships, one in Deloitte and one in Ernst & Young. But most importantly, Farouk is proud to be an Arab. He appreciates, he loves, and he understands his background, his cultural values, his religion. And he's very much eager to come back one day to give back to the Arab world, to his communities, and to be part of the positive change that is underway. See, I may have been lucky with Farouk to have made the right choices, However, I feel much more relieved that my research has offered some guidelines and some evidence, best practice around education and leadership. So I ask you to please engage with others. Don't go to two extremes. Don't overprotect your national identity. No one can take that away from you. Engage with others, build bridges so you can build a better working world. Don't be afraid to be different, to think differently. Think outside the box, challenge the status quo, and dehomogenize your thinking so you can promote innovation. Integrate rather than disintegrate. Don't hesitate to open up to both worlds and take the best of both worlds. And if you were an Arab, go for the 80-20 model and create your own unique development path. In this region, if you master those three skills, you will learn to succeed. And I thank you very much.